Hello, welcome to the Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. This is hopefully a good video, a fun video that I'm going to do once a month. Because once a month, live on Twitch with these guys, I look through all of the STLs and all of the miniatures from Patreons that I subscribe to. Instead of showcasing these to you, normally they're on the stream if you want to go watch it, but normally what I do is I'll sit for a couple of hours and we look through all the different files and we kind of talk about like the designers and where the designs are coming from and what they're used in and those sorts of things. And that's like a much longer video, but I don't really think people on YouTube want to spend 2 hours watching those, and you can always watch those on the stream. So here's my condensed version. So we'll make this video once a month. Let me know in the comments below if you want to see a video like this once a month of just stuff that I thought was cool from different designers that I thought was cool. Feel free in the comments below to let me know about some other designers you want me to check out or look at. And then I will go and do that. So let's go start us off straight away with I think one of the cutest collections you can get. So this is Warp Minis. So this is a Patreon. Again, just to be clear, these are all, what happens is when you subscribe on Patreon to these 3D designers, once a month, they'll release a set of miniatures, a set of STLs which you can download and you can print. You can print them as many times as you like. They're basically your files at that point. You've quote unquote bought them with your Patreon subscription. And normally afterwards, they're much more expensive if you wanted to go back and buy one of those STLs or the collection. So that's normally how it works. Okay, so this is Warp Minis. Actually local to me, Alex, just lives down the road. Super nice guy, really friendly. Really sweet human, and he's made this super fun collection of bugs and frogs. He also was the gnome guy. They became quite popular a few weeks ago, but I really like this set, and I think it's always really fun. I know it's a bit cutesy. I've had a scientist in the chat telling me that leaves would make good shields. I'm not sure if I agree with that 100%, but this is obviously one of the things he does really well is he also paints his minis every month before he showcases them. So I think that they look really good. So that is a design that you can download and 3D print. And then obviously he's also painted that up. And I think that looks brilliant personally. So love that, love the set. The next set is Rescale Miniatures. These previously called Lord of the Print. And they have got a absolutely massive collection of minis. I'm going to start out with my favorite, which is absolutely incredible, orc on a pig. And there's actually, I think, something like 9 orcs on pig sculpts with various states of naked orc and different pigs. So here you can see these are all very, very fun. And I was me and the chat were talking about this. Right now, if you're playing Age of Sigmar specifically, unfortunately, Gore Grunters and Big Pigs aren't particularly good. But imagine printing these up and using them as something like Varangard. That would be really cool. And I don't think anyone would take particular umbrage about that. And if you were doing that, there's so many designs in this release. So obviously the pigs are really good. And then if we go forward, they've also got rhinos. So these rhinoxes. So if you wanted to go the other route and you wanted to maybe go for playing orcs and you wanted a big pig, the rhino could be your big pig as an example. Or if you wanted to go down the route of using these as ogres and then have the orcs be obviously the ogre and then the rhino be things like Mournfang, that works really well as well. And then there's quite a few different ogre sculpts. There's also saber tusks. So you could use those maybe as Chaos Knights if you were doing our kind of slaves to porkness that we were thinking about doing, because I think that would look really fun. And when we get to it, there's a giant fucking rhino. So if you wanted to potentially run these again as ogres, you could do the Mournfang, and now you've got yourself a giant, Thunder Tusk or a Stonehorn. The other version of this is if you go pure orcs, this could be your Kragnos, and you could run this as your big Kragnos model, which I think would be another great shout as well. So I like this. This is very cool. But if you would, again, so you got a bunch of big beasties and riders, but then if we go back to the beginning, it's very fun. There's a cool orc on Wyvern, which is very, very fun. Very cool to see. And again, there's an orc on a vulture, and then there's a ton of orcs on foot. There's also things like a marsh crawler Sloggoth, which you could run. So you could definitely build like a Cruel Boys / there's a Trug as well, which is kind of a little bit out there. I think it's quite complicated. There's a very cool Trog boss, which I think is very cool. Very, very strong. Big mushroomy helmet. And then, yeah, loads of orcs on foot with shields and halberds and axes and armor and then nipples out and hammers and all sorts of different things. So I think you could potentially build a pretty fun, like kind of mixed, if you just 3D printed it all, you could be like, cool, I've got enough guys that these orcs could pretend to be chosen and the pigs could pretend to be Varangard. I've basically built myself some kind of army there. But then you've painted them, you've played with them, then they can be brutes and they could be something else as well. So I quite like the idea of building, loving the sculpts, painting them, and then saying to yourself, right, how can I use other rule sets? I personally think as long as if you got 10 orcs in heavy armor on foot and you're like, they're chosen, I'm like, cool, they're chosen. That's fine for me. That wouldn't bother me. Let me know in the comments below if it would bother you, but that would work really well for me, especially then the pigs being Varangard. I'm very close to maybe even wanting to do that myself. I think that would be super fun. So that is Rescale Miniatures. They're fun. Dragon Tapper's Lodge are a weird group of dudes who make weird minis every month. This one is called the Frost Hearth Lodge. They've made some beautiful stuff in the past. I just got to shout out these. These are whimsical, weird, cute, and fun. They make a bunch of other stuff as well, like Walrus Man. And then once they've got a 2-part release, this is an entire Cthulhu, horrible, weird, cute release, which is quite fun. But yeah, I really, really like the frosty side. But I wouldn't say I'm going to build a whole army out of this. It's not quite what we saw from the previous release where you could build armies. This is just a fun mini with teeth that are way too human on this kind of weird dude. I didn't like that at all. That's pretty fun. Shout out, as always, to Sacrus Mundus for making amazing 40k terrain that you can print out every month. Probably very few people care about terrain as much as I care about terrain. Great designer for doing terrain. Absolutely love it. Great. There's a cool sci-fi release from Arch Villain Games. So Arch Villain's probably one of the biggest designers. They've made this quite clearly, a quite clear rip of the kill team that you can get from Games Workshop. They've got the Arbites or whatever they're called. But they've got the shields, they've got the big mallets, they've got the armor. It's a nice updated version of them. And their sci-fi releases have been amazing. They did a Grey Knight release a few months ago that was just super, super cool. Also interesting, now we're starting to get into the realm of people starting to sculpt stuff for Trench Crusade. I think this is a little bit far future for how Trench Crusade will look. And it's kind of like a noble, bright, more cyberpunk version of 40k. So maybe it doesn't necessarily work. It's not necessarily giving Judge Dredd as a vibe, which is definitely what those designs do. Their fantasy release, though, was like a corrupted Sylvaneth, corrupted woodland set, which I thought was cool. It was like it had a little bit of everything in. Archvillain normally makes some pretty epic stuff. This actually is my favorite mini of the whole release. This wizard, it's incredibly clean. Obviously, just off the back of Games Workshop releasing their very cool new old world wizards, I think this was just a bit of a flex, just showing the coolest wizard that they could sculpt, which I thought was great. I know for a fact the chat, when we were looking through these, absolutely loved the kind of Sylvaneth Death Kragnos that we've got, Nimrithal, which was very cool. And when I initially opened this up, I was super impressed by this. This would paint up really well. It's got a lot of texture, especially if you're a Slapshot bro. So it would paint up super nice. It's got loads of detail. I personally think some people are quite intimidated by that level of detail. But what's nice is, especially with Archvillain, they generally tend to do a lot of texture. And therefore, when you're doing a lot of texture, you can do some super fun stuff. So next up, we are going to be looking at Clay Beast Creation. So Clay Beast Creation has been working on, one of the good things about Clay Beast is when they do their releases, it's part of an ongoing series of releases. So here we're working on a couple of armies simultaneously. He just did a giant Gargant release. There was loads of Ogres. And he's been working on like a kind of like Lumineth release as well, but more going kind of like sand Lumineth, kind of like Arabian, as you can see from these chariots, which are very fun. Again, loads of texture and detail, which is immediately, as soon as I say think texture and detail in miniatures, I think Clay Beast Creation. I think that's one of the things they do really well at. So you can see here these chariots, which are super cool, very fun. And then this absolutely stunning stunning, snake wizard on a carpet, which is super cool. Could be used in Old World as well, but just a really fun design. And I really like it. That's super nice. The Archvillain set, just to kind of go back to that a moment, as well as all of the Treekin and that wizard that I really loved, there was a bunch of centaurs with riders, which were pretty wild. Very, very fun. And I think not necessarily usable in any games, but interesting. And that's it for the review. That's everything in this week, this month. This month's actually been a little bit on the drier side, I would say. I might spend some time in January looking up some other Patreons, because there were some suggested to me. And obviously I've seen things like Lost Kingdom miniatures and stuff. You don't have to reference them in the video. But let me know what your favorite of all of those miniatures were. And if this is a video you'd like me to make once a month, where we just look through some cool designs, look at some fun stuff. I think 3D printing minis and using them in games is super valid. I really do think that. Either as proxies, either as cheaper alternatives, or because stylistically you just prefer them. Games Workshop don't make a ton of pirate ogres, as an example. I wouldn't mind there being an entire ogre release that's pirates, and then that's ninjas, and then that's also maybe like, witch hunters. You can have a lot of choices out there, and we should, as miniature fans, because I'm assuming we're all miniature fans, not just Games Workshop fans, as miniature fans, want more choices to be out there. We want the games that we play to be more interesting and diverse. So super cool. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know. And then thanks very much for tuning in. See you soon. Bye.